Okay, we're doing plain fruit exercise. I've done this before and so many people liked it that I figured, hey, I should do this again. So I got a little bit of a different setup here than last time with the plain fruit. And for those of you who don't know, this plain fruit, grab them right here, is I made them out of just like air dry clay. This is them here. And I make them flat plain sides to help you get your kind of mind around and grasp what I'm talking about when I talk about planes, which comes up in pretty much everything that you paint, from portraits, landscapes, still lifes, everything. And doing this plain fruit is just a good helpful way to, understand this concept of planes, which helps you understand values and colors and form and all that good stuff. So let's jump in. I have a small linen panel here. It's 6 by 8 inches. I like doing, whenever I do small studies of fruit like this, I like to keep it really small so I can do it pretty quickly and cover a lot of ground. Helps me with more expressive brush work, and I just highly recommend keeping things pretty small. I just put a wash of actually all 3 of the primaries, which is what I'm using on my palette. I have Ultramarine blue, Cadmium red, Cadmium lemon, and Titanium white. Got some Gamblin solvent-free gel as my medium, and my paint thinner. I like just using the primaries for these simple exercises, just to keep things extra simple, and you're never too good to go back to the primaries. All right, now I got a simple grid to help us draw this in. I'm just gonna use a 0 flat brush. Just get a little bit of blue and red, kind of get a dark purple, a little yellow, neutralizes it. If you want to know like how I got that kind of reddish brown wash, it's all 3 of the primaries. You mix up blue and red, you get purple. Complement of purple is yellow. It's going to knock it back, kind of make it brownish. So let's get this horizon line, or the end of the table here, which is just below that midline. So that's just going to kind of come across there. Help us get the rest of this in. Can kind of go to the middle here at the cross and see like where it crosses there. Kind of angles up like that. And this plain fruit, it's also going to help you with drawing straight lines. I try and do this even, if this was just a regular apple and pear, I would try and draw them with straight lines, because that's going to help you identify the planes. This kind of angles back and angles back to down to the left a bit, and kind of look at this negative shape of this light gray of the ground. But you know what? This actually up here, I realize is higher than there. So just ignore that. I think it's just what I use. So this would actually kind of be down there, kind of like that. That makes sense. Let me try and this a little better, because it's actually this is actually like a paper palette. That's like the gray, and I think it just got kind of like folded up or wrinkled up back here, which made it uneven. But so we got that, and then you look at this negative space and like that shape, it's like this kind of comes, the shadow there moves forward. Kind of see where it crosses over, which is kind of like here. And I hope doing this exercise will help you see these angles when you go and paint regular fruit. I know it's hard at first. I struggle with that at first. I'm like, how do people like see these angles in this fruit that's always curved? So I got inside there. What I like to do also is when I'm drawing it, I like to block out the light and shadow. So if I squint my eyes, it's going to be kind of like the line of where light becomes shadow. So it's kind of something like that. And then you got this cast shadow. Thinking this apple actually could be brought down. And you see how you can't really see the edge of where the apple is in the table? That's something you should try and capture once we start painting it. I'll get into that a little more, but losing that edge. So I got that. I'm actually gonna group the shadow in with it. Seen any of my still life painting videos, you've probably seen me do this before. Blocking out the light and shadow. This apple comes here, goes back like that. And then this other cast shadow here. So this pear kind of starts here, angles down. And again, blocking out the light and shadow. I think I can bring this down a bit more. Alrighty, now we can start painting. Actually, just gonna get this background in. Just gonna get some blue, red. It's gonna make a really dark purple. Just a touch of yellow, neutralize it, kind of knock it back. Get this background in, which is our darkest dark. Help us gauge values as we go. that. Now let's go to this pair. I'm just gonna break it down, just light and shadow right now. So let's mix up a green. So the way I think about it is like, all right, what is the color of this pair? All right, it's a green pair. So blue and yellow make green, but that green is way too vibrant. Nothing's gonna really ever be just like that, you know, green straight out of the tube pretty much. So I gotta use green's complement, which is red, to knock it back. And I'm making the shadow color of this first. And what I'm trying to do is just create an average. Like I know you see a bunch of different kind of greens in that shadow. I'm not worrying about that right now. I'm just trying to choose one color and value to represent the shadow. Don't want it to be darkest dark or lightest light. So I'll be able to manipulate this later. So this looks pretty good. You see kind of how desaturated it is. Also notice my brush work, how I'm changing the direction, thinking about those planes, and just trying to cover the space efficiently. So that's shadow. Now the light side, add some yellow to this, maybe a little white, still a touch of red. It's pretty desaturated green. You notice how I'm mixing it right next to the shadow color so I can see them together. Maybe a little too much red. Don't want to go as light as possible. Actually want to go kind of dark as I can, so I can build lighter values on top of this. I think I can thicken this up a bit. There's actually like a little bit of light kind of creeping over. Let me actually get that in. Right now, like right there. All simple. So I'm actually going to go down. I'm just going to do this pair to completion and then the apple to completion. Now there is this shadow underneath the pair, which I actually probably should have put in while I had this background color because it's very similar. Just got that right there. Make sure to bring this down there. So now is the fun part of making adjustments, but actually first let's get some of this ground in, because some of that will be reflected into this pair. So I just put some white actually into my background color. You see how it lightened it up. Still a little too vibrant of a purple. So taking purple's complement yellow, it's going to get you this kind of lighter gray. Still, see, like that's a little too blue for me. Complement of blue is orange. Orange is yellow and red, so if I mix a little bit of that into it, it should gray it down a bit. Something like that. So I'm going to get some of this around this pair so we can help compare values. So now, let's go back to this pair. Just kind of clean that up right there. Now let's put in the lightest value, which is this plane over here. Well, it's not the lightest value, but it's the lightest plane other than these highlight areas. So I want to get that in. Just gonna mix some yellow to my green here, a little more red. Allowing the paint to get a little bit thicker. So if I just kind of look at this plane, and it's like this and that top part are pretty similar. So I'm thinking about, as if I'm running my brush along that top plane. So I'll get enough red to my green. Got that plane there. Now I'm kind of mixing in between, like going a little bit darker, because then there's this plane in the middle here. And there's a lot of red being reflected. This other one, so if I just get some red on my brush, keep it relatively thin, I can brush it in. See how that shows up? It's gonna look really nice once we get the red apple in. Now, I'm going to just take my brush and kind of soften that transition a bit. So now this, see that little plane there? That has a lot of the ground. So if I get some of this ground color and just do what I did with the red and kind of brush it in a bit. It's going to help kind of establish how that plane is facing. Now I'm seeing like this is a lot closer to this plane color. So I get some of that. Actually, I'm just gonna mix a little bit of the ground because it looks like it's a little cooler. So like that's a plane. Now this little corner, that definitely needs to be lighter, but it's still darker than, like, say, that plane there. Just gonna come back to my lightest. This one, just kind of re-establish it and kind of bring it down into there a bit. We get a little bit of that color in there. Coming back to this ground, there's definitely a lot of it being reflected. Kind of like right into there. And this red, I'm gonna darken it with a little blue. I see like right under here, this kind of plane of it, it gets really dark. Right there. I actually feel like I can darken this side. Gonna kind of come back again to this lightest green that I have, and just make sure I've established this well. Kind of comes down like that. I just feel like there's too much of a difference between this green, so I'm just kind of brushing that in a bit. And I'll get some white, these lightest little shiny areas, still mixing it into my light green color. And shine there. Right there. And you can always adjust, like I'm adjusting this plane here. Bit. See, I think I went a little too light. This one. This plane down here. I do see this little corner being lighter, kind of swooping into that side there. I think I can push a little more white into this side. See, now that I put that in, or like put this pair in, kind of realize I could lighten the ground a bit. So I'm just gonna do that. Some white, blue, red. It's kind of like a light purple. Touch of yellow. Desaturate it. Main thing I want is the value, right? Now, for edges, I'm gonna mix up a purple, like the dark shadow that's underneath the pear there. I don't like that harsh line. Like, I don't like how I can see where the edge of the pear is. So I want to lose that. I want to get like kind of like a reddish, actually it's more kind of red, reflect a lot of light. And I want to lose that edge between the shadow and the pear. Kind of like that. I can actually just kind of drift this dark shadow over to here. Now I don't like a lot of these harsh lines. I'm just going to kind of break them up a little bit. I'm also going to lose the edge there in the shadows. So let's go to the apple. Let's do the shadow color. It's pretty dark. A lot of it's pretty dark shadow. Some blue, red, touch of yellow. It's really dark red. So I got that. I'm actually just going to brush it into that shadow a little bit because a lot of the red from this apple in the shadow is being reflected down to that shadow. It's hard to see in the photo, but I promise it's there. So kind of losing that edge again. It's going to help. Now, push some more red, touch of yellow into there. Still got a little bit of green in there. You can pull green from anywhere on your palette. Just throwing a little bit of that in there. Red's complement. So I don't want to go the lightest red that I can, but just want to block out this light side of the apple. Now what I'm going to do is kind of pull some of this red and let it fade out kind of like that. I'm going to let it mix in. Just going to actually pull this into the shadow. Let it mix in and kind of pull it up like that. I think this actually comes down more. I think I might have made this apple a little too long, but that's an easy fix. Just kind of trim it up right there. Get the ground. Trim it right there. I'm actually going to soften the edge of the shadow. Let that paint kind of blend together a bit. Edges are so important. I got that. A lot of times you have to kind of like come back in and reestablish kind of like the darkest little bit in those shadows. So I'm actually going to go to this ground purplish color, get kind of like a mid-tone of it, because I see it. I'm just going to work it, get a little bit of red in there too. I can see it being reflected up into the apple in here. I also see it kind of right here. Gonna mix up kind of a lighter red, some red, white, touch of yellow. Kind of a little more red. Got that. Got that plain in there. Push a little more red. It kind of comes down there. Take this kind of down like that. Actually come back to this dark shadow and just kind of blend it out a bit. And, some white into this. Whoops. Go even more white kind of in the center of these shines. Get a little bit of blue. Kind of get almost like a really light purple for certain areas like there. There, it's catching some light. I'm going to come back with some red and kind of, oh, it's a little too much. Just going to try and brush that in a little more. The shadow, that core, that reflected light in there. Just kind of really sell that. Push a little more blue into the table back here to set it in the distance more. It's like a little cooler. Maybe have it get warmer as it comes closer. But we're getting close. Wrapping this up. See, a little bit of that kind of goes and drifts back down into there. Doing these planes, always good fun exercise to do. Kind of soften the edge right there because there's like a slight plane change there. It gets a little darker. I think I'm liking it. Take some of this ground color. Let's push it there, getting reflected up from the ground a bit. The cool thing about these plane fruits is stuff like that. It makes things obvious, kind of, or more obvious, like what light source is hitting like what plane. You come back with some pretty dark, shadowy red. Making sure. This down here. Again, not worrying about losing that edge. Kind of soften that a bit. This goes in. Maybe not that much. Kind of wrapping this reflected light around. All right. A little bit of yellow in this red right here. See, I can soften edges and it still reads as, plain. Like I don't need to have super hard edges everywhere. And if this was, real fruit, you just would kind of really soften the transitions. But like, I'm noticing this middle plane, it's too dark. Like I need to lighten it. I need to kind of just push it lighter. Yeah. I like that a lot more. If you enjoyed this one, have fun painting.